Hi guys, Jane here, and today I want to do kind of a discussion, a spoilery discussion of The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. So if you have never read the book and want to, probably not the place to be. If you have read the book and you'd like to hear my thoughts on the big twist particularly, this is the right place. Also, if you never intend to read the book but just happen to like spoilery videos, this could be the place for you, because I'm going to talk to you kind of what the book is about and then go on to my thoughts about the big twist. So The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is the fourth Poirot book by Agatha Christie, and so far it is my favorite. I've been kind of struggling with Poirot. I love mysteries, but classic mysteries I'm starting to kind of not enjoy as much. And I think because a lot of times there's not enough information for me to feel like I could have solved the mystery myself. I do like some of the things Poirot does, but sometimes it's just a little too out there for me. This one had that same issue, but on the other hand, it was really brilliantly done, and when the reveal happened, I was like, oh, you did not. So, this is about a man who was murdered, obviously Roger Ackroyd, and our narrative perspective is through the doctor of the town. The doctor of the town lives beside Hercule Poirot, and he's called to Roger Ackroyd, who wants to talk to him about a situation. Roger Ackroyd is a wealthy man in town whose girlfriend had recently committed suicide, and he's received a letter saying that she was being blackmailed, and presumably the blackmailer's name is going to be revealed in the letter. The doctor then leaves because he's sent away. Roger Ackroyd's like, hey, I need to check into this, please go, but he'd had dinner with him and had some questions for him about the girlfriend. The girlfriend had killed her husband, and the blackmailer knew that she'd killed her husband and was blackmailing her because she was a killer. And anyway, the doctor finds out that Poirot is an investigator and kind of is with Poirot as he investigates this murder. And I am sorry for all of the noises. There is I'm recording at the local library instead of the college library where I typically record, and there is a children's story time going on not too terribly far from me. So if you hear bells and singing, it's the little kids, and I'm sorry. The weather was really bad, and the university library is a fairly far walk, and to do so with a computer when I didn't have proper ways to cover it was not a good idea. So anyway, again, you have your doctor, who is the neighbor with Poirot. Poirot is investigating. Roger Ackroyd is the person who has died, and presumably it is the blackmailer of his girlfriend who has killed him. Now, there's a couple suspects. We have Ralph, who is Roger's son, who has kind of had a falling out with his dad and is not living there currently, but is in town. We have Jeffrey Raymond, who is Roger Ackroyd's secretary. We have Parker, who is the butler. We have Miss Russell, who is the housekeeper. We have Flora Ackroyd, who is Roger Ackroyd's niece, but has been living there since her father died. Mrs. Ackroyd, who is Roger's widowed sister-in-law, who is living with them. And Blunt, who is Ackroyd's friend, who is staying with them for a couple days. So you have all these suspects, and presumably, like I said, they're trying to figure out who the blackmailer is, and each of these characters has a reason that they are suspicious. Now, I will say, one of my frustrations with this book, and has been kind of with the Poirot books, is there's a lot of suspects, there's a lot of people to keep track of, and sometimes I have trouble doing that. I did write it down this time to help me out, because especially listening to the audiobook when everybody's got the same names that start with the same letter, it can be really confusing, because you have Roger, Ralph, Raymond, Russell, it's just like too many of the same letters. So I didn't love that, but also the doctor, who is our main narrator, he has a sister, and I can't remember what her name is, to be honest. I think it's Gabrielle, but I could be totally wrong about that. So we have all these characters and they're investigating the death, and the doctor's sister is very much a busybody, so she is very helpful to Poirot, or thinks she's being, as she's like feeding them clues and feeding them ideas. A couple things besides the twist that I really enjoyed about this book, since I already told you kind of what doesn't work for me. It's hard to figure out who the killer is. I didn't sense it until the end, and I have that trouble in Poirot books in general, and everybody has very similar names, so it's kind of hard sometimes to follow. A couple things I loved. Poirot is constantly comparing the sister to a mongoose, because of her curiosity. And I thought that was such an interesting metaphor in comparison that I hadn't heard before. I presume it's from the Rikki Tikki Tavi story by Rudyard Kipling, which I had seen as a child, like seen the movie version of. I don't know if I've read it yet, but I want to for sure if I haven't. But I loved Rikki Tikki Tavi. That was the first I'd ever heard of a mongoose, so him calling her a mongoose and making kind of a lot of jokes and references to mongoose tickled me pink. I loved it. He could have done the curiosity, killed the cat, and instead it's mongooses who are curious. So I love that. There's also a really interesting quote that says something about women being inherently honest while men are often fine taking their secrets to the grave. And I think that was Poirot talking about the difficulties with the girl who, Roger Ackroyd's girlfriend, who had committed suicide. She just had to confess, whereas a man would have been happy to just take the secret to the grave. Apparently, in Poirot's view, men are more secretive. And I will say that one thing that is seen a lot in this series is a little bit of misogyny and views about women that I don't necessarily agree with. But it is interesting to see Poirot's views of women, especially since he doesn't have his typical sidekick, Hastings. The other three Poirot books before this were told through Hastings as the point of view character. And Hastings in this is in Argentina, I believe. He has run off to Argentina, and I think he's gotten married, but don't quote me. He found a girl in book 2 that I think he married, the Murder on the Links. I think he's married to her, but again, I'm not super far. I could be wrong. So the thing that's important is, because this is told by the doctor, we learn at the big twist ending is that this story has been told by an unreliable narrator, and it is indeed the doctor who has killed Roger Ackroyd. The doctor knew that the wife had poisoned the husband. He started blackmailing of the girlfriend. He started blackmailing her, and she ultimately couldn't take it. He'd upped the stakes maybe, wanted more money, and she couldn't take it anymore and committed suicide. He goes to Roger Ackroyd, finds out Roger Ackroyd is about to find out who the blackmailer was, and murders him. And there just wasn't a lot of breadcrumbs passed around. Now, I think this book, if I read it a second time, and I've thought about doing that, would have the breadcrumbs that I wanted a little bit more once I knew, kind of like The Sixth Sense, how at the end you realize, oh crap. And the doctor even kind of says, well, I've pointed out throughout the book that, there were things that I did what I had to do, which wasn't much. And that was him saying he was cleaning up the crime scene as opposed to trying to revive the body when we first find the murder victim. So it was an interesting book, and I love that twist. I know it's like a twist that's been done, but I think that was probably one of the earlier occurrences of it being done, and since I just wasn't prepared for it, I was excited about it. I loved it when it happened, and I thought that was a good way to do it, especially now that Hastings isn't in the picture. This view of any narrator we have may be unreliable, and you can't trust anybody. The only person you can trust maybe is Poirot, and who knows? At this point, you can't trust anybody. So I did really enjoy that aspect of the story. Again, it was a little bit deceptive, but it was brilliant, and I was okay with the way it was done, especially because this is the first time we've had a narrator other than Hastings, and Agatha Christie really was like, hey, you can't trust the narrators. So I will know for future books not to trust the narrators. So that was a really nice thing to happen in the book. I really was excited about that. A complaint I had, though, the doctor basically is told by Poirot, go commit suicide, because otherwise you're going to get taken and killed. Do it for your sister's sake. And I'm not sure I loved that justice in the book. I really like when people are taken and tried, but when it's a suicide or an accidental death in mysteries to bring about the justice, I really seem to have a problem with that. So I wasn't loving that aspect of the story, which is, I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. It is my favorite Poirot so far, but there were things that I didn't love, and that was kind of one of the things that I didn't love. So yeah, I recommend this one. I think that was brilliant. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you now know the secret, but for me, that's not a huge, like, it's a spoiler, but I like books knowing sometimes when there's a twist ending and wanting to go back in and read it as far as an unreliable narrator. I also think if you're an author, this is a great book to read to feel out the unreliable narrator done well. So I do recommend, if you haven't read it, if you have read it, please tell me below what you thought of the twist ending, what you thought of the unreliable narrator motif. My social media is below if you would like to contact me off of YouTube. Also, if you'll hit subscribe for more content, I'd appreciate it, and give my video a like. I am an author. I have books on Amazon and on Smashwords if you have any interest in checking those out. Some of the Amazon ones are Kindle Unlimited, so if you are in that program, you can read them for free. This is Jane. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.